Thank you. I want to say a big thank you to Variant and Kith for doing all this. Variant for hosting. Obviously Kith for publishing my book. Hi. Nice to see all you guys. I'm Qetsi'ah, or Q, whichever is simpler for people to say. Uh, I guess I'll just get into reading. I have got a couple poems from my book. And then maybe two new ones. We'll see. You guys might be lucky and you might get to hear my new poems. I'm going to start with a poem called Ars Poetica, Elegy for a Damaged Good, which is in the first section of my collection, because I have three sections in this collection. And it's after Ivihois, who is a wonderful poet and a pretty good friend. And we love Ivy. What if poems are made of moonshine and carrion? Some kind of vulture preens herself at this mountainside. I learn to break stanzas like bread, buttered with something, adjectives, cypress vine, perhaps, maybe nothing. What if poems are some kind of soulless bird, something edible? If this is an ars poetica for anything other than the self, it has yet to explain why birds dance in my living room. What if there is nothing but birdsong left? What if poetry is an expression of the dying? What if love is an expression of the way we remain, unfixed from any tether? What if poetry is not the divine, but rather the autistic flying? What if these unmarked points all lead me back? Somewhere untraceable is calling your name. What if the unmarked grave is for us, our bones entwined in death? I find you as beautiful as the living. Please, I have long renounced all poetry, other than your smile. Tell me how to breathe as though I cannot feel the universe above me. What if the universe has shattered and cannot die, and so instead appears as poetry in the fists of those who love it least? So that was that one. And then the next one I'm going to read is actually after MJ Gomez. So I was like, it's very appropriate for this reading. And it's the first poem of the second part of my collection. And it is technically a contrapuntal, but I'm only going to read it one way. So if you want to see the whole thing, I guess you'll just have to buy my book. And it's called Contrapuntal for a Forgiving God. I have arguments with God every day. This is what I tell myself, buttering toast at a broken table to avoid acknowledging the truth. I break my fingers and I know it is myself I hate. I curse at the sky. I have no excuse for my laughter when others take his name in vain. I do pretend I am not of him. I see it shatter in my empty hands as though the gift of life was something I could ever give back. They tell me they hate him, and as I cast my eyes skyward, I say I understand their frustrations with a God they have never prayed to. I ask for forgiveness I am unworthy of. I ask for a love I cannot carry. He sends a star to kiss my eyes with eternity. I kneel on broken bones to ask him. He turns his ear towards my lips, and I plead for favors unearned. Powerless, I hunger for his blessings. Even as I tell others I am of their blood, I dig my nails into my skin. I know I am lying. My blood is not my own. I was created in a hurricane, bleeding winds. I was destined for this. The only thing I own is my voice. He kissed my throat as a father does to gift me with my soul. I should have known never to bow to a king, when to be thrown to the lions is to be thrown into the arms of God. Trust me, he asks, and I will answer with birdsong. So that's that one. And I really love that one because it was, I wrote it after my favorite poem of MJ's, which is La Illa, which is a really beautiful poem. And it made me think more about the way that I talk about God, which is very key to this collection. And then the next poem I'm going to read is a ghazal, which is a form that MJ and I both love. And it's called L'chaim, L'chaim, L'chaim. I look to the moon and ask it to burn the whole of a traitor. It replies, love, love, the very soul of a traitor. My feet will walk me back to your side each time I stray. I dig myself from the earth, the very soul of a traitor. The strings of disaster are so easily plucked, as though a harp, the truth untold of a traitor. I look to the moon and ask it to dance. It replies, l'chaim, to life, left in the cold of a traitor. If your name was shaped like the word for delight, I would not know you. Long has joy been something unreachable for the soul of a traitor. The music has laughed last on the tongue, as though breaking apart it becomes the burnt coal of a traitor. I look to the moon and find tides on the surface, grey waves shifting to match the ocean, taking the toll of a traitor. The ocean replies, light, the everlasting is not the answer, only the empty bowl of a traitor. Each sick-hearted scheme dreams itself into your lover. I remember myself as nothing, carrying half the soul of a traitor. I look to the moon and see only myself. The silver dust is no longer other, is no longer all a traitor. From scalp to toe, I become only what returns to you, the tree bark, the snake skin. Perhaps I take the role of a traitor. I learned how to clothe myself in the word for the dying, a cross shaped like a Q that my tongue lies down for, the whole soul a traitor. So that one was fun. I really liked writing that one as well. And then the next one I'm going to read is also from this collection. And I'm going to read a poem from the second half of my collection, which is more about love. And it's called Prayers for the Beloved, which is a prose poem. And I don't write many of these. The looping of wool, soft touch, I pick lilies from thorns. I find your hand under my head. Kiss me, sing to me, write me poetry into the dead of night. Rise from the ink-black silence to become my sun. Our winter is past, the rivers are for us to dance in. My love is mine, my soul belongs to you. My soul was made by God to be yours. Hold it in your palms, cupped like a mirror of river water. I've put my trust in your stone walls. Hold me to your chest. I will lie between your heart and your throat, curled like a child, a fox. Trust me with your life. I will mend the fraying fabric. I will knit a scarf to hold you together. Let me hold you together. Let me kiss those scarlet lips. Let me worship you as though kissing you is how one talks to God. In soft touch from thorns, I find you in me. Kiss me, write me poetry into the ink black. I become our past loves. Hold it in your palms, my trust in you. Hold me to your chest. I will lie between your heart and your life. I will mend you. Let me hold you. This is how one talks to God. And then, yeah, I liked writing that one as well. I'm going to do one more from my book, and then I will do maybe one new one, and then we'll see. So this one is To Scrape Off, which is about my name. And it's another contrapuntal, but again, if you want to read it as not a contrapuntal, as not a one way across, you're going to have to buy my book because I'm not reading it all three ways. So this is To Scrape Off. I was named for a gift from God. Qetsi'ah, second daughter of Job, blessed by moonlight. Qetsi'ah from Qetsi'ah, meaning to scrape off, meaning to remove something of yourself, meaning to catch in open palms and not return it. Kezia, the name now, meaning cinnamon, meaning sweet as tree bark, meaning an equal daughter, meaning someone moving from one point to another. I am antiquity, this gift from God, named further back, traced like a bloodline to a point at which the Hebrew and the skin had not yet parted like the Red Sea. Qetsi'ah the soft, meaning gentler than Qetsi'ah, and yet still the vicious motion of removing the body from the palms of angels sworn to smite you. Oh, to be named for the ocean. Oh, what a weight off my shoulders it would be to be named for something other than a bloodline. Name me again, God. Pluck something, I will honor any request. Pluck my mother tongue from death and bless me with a name meant for another person. Name me again so that I might stop becoming only what the angels imagined. Qetsi'ah from Qetsi'ah, to scrape off, to remove flesh, to give it out to others, to be tree bark and sweet spice, skin sought by others, unwilling or unable to prevent thieves. So that is the final one from my book that I'm going to read today. But I thought I'd read a new one that I wrote, which is called The Migration of Birds. And I think this one's kind of important for the political climate we're in, not to make everybody a bit depressed. But it's a bit softer than it could be. But yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see. So this is The Migration of Birds. The forest by the village I grew up in is a radical space. There are no Marxists or protests or marches. There is no anger, no silence, no abuse, no attendance codes or essays, no shirt sleeves, no ties. But all this and still radical. Radical soft grass and snowdrops peeking up at the trees, radical lichen on the bark, radical feathers from passing birds, radical worms snuggled deep in the black soil, radical clouds watching it all, and raindrops keeping everything alive. The forest by the village I grew up in is a radical space. Trees remembering their 500-year-old bodies and leaning slightly against each other. Their roots feeding the flowers feeding the bees sitting on my shoulders, waiting for the sun to peek back out again, to warm their wings again, so they can spread the flowers again. You might think I mean radical in the way a 90s surfer meant radical to mean cool or hip or far out man or dope or a chilled board on a wave dancing. And I do a bit, but mostly I mean it in the way people called Marx radical, in the way revolution is radical. I mean radical in the way that sun rising again after a tragedy can be radical. I mean it in the way that my body is resistance, the way my lips moving with air is resistance. Forests are just acts of resistance growing out of the ground by themselves. When I call the forest where I grew up radical, I mean radical because when the old man who voted for Brexit and thinks I am not British enough sees the birds dropping towards the treetops, sees the swallow diving, wings in an arc around them, blue and red and white and beautiful, this migratory bird in flight, he forgets that he hates immigrants. He sees in the swallow what I see in the world. He sees that there are no borders. He sees that the word illegal is a lie. He sees that we are not performing background checks on the feathered silhouettes on our skyline. We are just letting them dance. The old man just watches the swallow, fresh out of Africa's airspace, dusted with sea salt, this forest the first stop on its migration, and smiles. Many days later he will, for the first time, consider being kinder to the family next door. After all, don't we call the migration of birds a natural thing? Yeah, so that is all of the poems I'm going to read today. So MJ, it's your turn.
Oh my gosh. Hello everyone. Oh, that was amazing, Q. Yeah, that was an amazing reading. And the way I sort of quantify or rather acknowledge how good readings are is if they make me want to write. And I was writing down notes basically the entire time. Oh, uh, well, first of all, I'd like to thank both Variant and Kith as well. Thank you, Megan, for organizing this event, and thank you, Q, for inviting me to be a part of it. I'll begin, as Q did, with a few poems from the book. Oh, yeah. First poem will be the first poem in the book, which is Ghazal, just like L'chaim, L'chaim, L'chaim. And this is Ghazal as a favor denied. What should become of man, begging the angels for one kiss of flame? Only his mercy keeps God veiled. His visage holds the lust of flame. At sundown, the pilgrim holds a burning Polaroid to his chest, sings, Beloved, I forsake this memory in service of flame. A father, in his grief, leaves to make all others drink of his cup, his hands a cracked minaret, hands set to burn a chalice of flame. The final vestige of his homeland crumbles in a long embrace. Love blackens his palms. Still he craves the lotus petals' kiss of flame. What mockery must a second's infatuation make of me? Even colorless water was once draped in a great dress of flame. Satan welcomes the kafir. Earthly love binds them still to his side. Their bodies lick dry, open mouths locked in a long, sweet bliss of flame. When the brazen bull was unveiled, the faithless all wailed in the streets. Now they speak not of light, only of heat when they tell us of flame. O humanity, do you still desire to leave this world untouched? O wildfire, do you fear your consumption or the deep hiss of flame? Instead, let me tell you this. MJ does not stand for anything. Two glyphs lie rusted, a prayer unheard from a palace aflame. The next poems will be two poems titled Studies. So the first is a study of mud, beginning with an epigraph from the 15th chapter of the Quran. Indeed, we created man from sounding clay molded from black mud. The body was made empty, to beg, for the sky to split, open, and bring forth light, tendered honey under our tongues. This is a portrait of the man aching for something to swallow. The oud surrounding him like sweet music. With music, a man is a song, fragrant with thirst and smoke. Verily, you were unmade in service of the paint, so call this prayer. You were made empty to give dawn purpose, so drink hands and knees to the earth. A man presses his lips to the earth, searching for what remains of daylight. Study of daylight. The title is a lie. This poem is about daylight the way the page is prostration to an unnamed god. I never asked for water, but thirst walks in my stead, bends these bones toward the desert where madmen drink of longing and become famous for it. Among them I see Majnun, patron saint of ripped collars, called lover, called devotee, called insane by history. He does not bend down to drink or pray. Unlike the rest, he drinks standing and sleeps standing. His gold-plated longing adorns his shadow. He who has lost his name bows only to a beloved, relieved to wake each morning, a bleeding throat and split calluses. He is the luckiest of us all. We who wander for want of nothing envy the blood-red ants who utter no God's name, rewarded with dust, twisting scripture to firewood for love, named after what is true and impossible. At daybreak, I praise God in a language I do not know, except to praise with. Am I still a sinner if I can only speak of forgiveness to what drowns me? Is a love unmoored enough to anchor my feet to? This bridge of daylight upon daylight, pinned by faith, I pore through the translations, asking if faith is only for the willing. I check the back of my neck and feel for God's 100th name, with which the faithful may use to guarantee an answer from beyond the veil. And beyond the veil is a face like mine, a face not mine, asks for forgiveness. The sky splits open. Birds leap in fear of the trumpets. Divinity boils away the water of the body to make way for the sunrise and nothing else. And the last poem from the book I'll be reading, as requested by Q, is a poem called Good Lord Green Apple, written after a sort of poetic motif in Ocean Vuong's novel On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. What I did was that I lifted this motif from the context of the novel into the context of a sort of ars poetica. Good Lord Green Apple. His heart in his mouth, his heart penciled into his knuckles, his heart as finger painting, his name a heart beat away from the drummer's march at time, his name crushed between a stranger's teeth, dusted into stars revolving golden green, green apple, dear starless, moonless night, don't lie to me. Know that to love something is to leave it shattered. To be ruined is to be robbed of desire, but still you press the flesh wound to your lips. The forearm forgets it was anything more than a canvas for every shade of red. Good Lord, how can I tell you this? Give me a word to love into a palm-scented mess until we miss it over again. Give me something to cry about. Another name tossed to the dust. Names like rage and malice. Ugly names, potted lilac names. Names made beautiful when no one's left to remember them. Names only we cry over. Names in half-dead tongues. Names like sunset, ruin, rubble, because something has to die. Because when a poet needs something to grieve, he makes up a boy and gives him a name and takes both away. Hello, not Max. Hello, not boy, not girl. Do you want another name? Is the soup to your liking? Did you ever love someone enough to force yourself back into the shape of a boy? Don't answer. The mystery is what keeps the story going. Keep walking. Green apple. For better or for worse, the Ars Poetica has already come to an end at its beginning. For better, good night, not Max. Keep walking. Keep walking. The blank page grieves every inch of me it gets to keep. If you're still awake, love, beware the flashing lights. This means the sun is rising. I promise it doesn't mean we're out of time. Just kidding. Good morning. Good Lord. Green apple. And now I'll be reading four short poems that are not from the book. Yes, the first was published, I believe, in Anti-Heroin Chic, titled Lapse. Lapse. It's on days like these that I want for a less forgiving God, days windswept and sunless, beckoning a cold that pierces. I call the Adhan and my voice breaks when I reach the word success. Come to success, come to success. I echo piety to no one in particular, like a zookeeper's raven waiting to be fed. From these lens, how else but to view mercy as debt? A wooden eye for an eye. The gift of seeing outweighs even 5 centuries of worship, narrates the angel. Allegedly, I wanted to retort, but I'd already used my best inks, too many firm letters to heaven. I need something to hurt me back, please and soon. Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, I don't need to be convinced of your plan, but haven't you heard? I ask not for water, but thirst. Now here I am at your service, coiled and waiting. Now let me say the impossible thing. I am still so afraid. What to do? What to do with all the sudden time I begged for? These counterfeit hours. Surely you have no equal. Surely you must know. When a pigeon is crushed beneath a tire, and I am haunted by the image, which one of us was spared? The next is a short, untitled poem after Maya Angelou. Listen to the world going on outside. Till now, I've been wondering where to turn. The rain stood still in this part of town, and the folks are all but waiting for their portion of the planet to burn. I know it, better than anyone else. I'll always be your baby. Whatever's left of the sun is still shining, but as scientists say, we've got all of 8 minutes. Some are crying in the streets, some are singing praise. I don't mind. In the beginning, the Lord put light at both ends of the tunnel. Don't you know it? Better than anyone else, I'll always be your baby. Next is an unpublished poem titled Cenotaph, which Q has expressed a preference for as well. Cenotaph. O sweetest of songs, dewy light upon morning dust, out of every vein and ventricle, there is no winding road, no turn of verse that leads elsewhere except to your door. Did it matter that I had nothing more than a glimpse? I saw you look back, eyes wide but not afraid. A second chance I didn't have the courage to pray for. A rose gold palace anyone could step right into and live forever. So what if the door had already shut? I kept you inside me like any good lover. I let myself go mad to be inside myself entirely. Inside me is an old garden. Look down and see the orchids humming beneath translucent skin. There I was a coolness to my own eyes, and just like the rain, I could disappear fully into the ground. And the final poem I'll be reading is Litany in Which I'm Tired of Waiting for Judgment Day, published in Show Poetry Journal this year. Praise everything but a definite end. Praise self-mythology. Praise and cull theophany from elegy. Praise the infinite pasts churning within you. Praise the boy king and his toy ducks, immortalized for the length of this dunya. Praise hallelujah. Praise belting Jeff Buckley's hallelujah, so off-key you'd think the Lord himself would come down and shut you up. But you're wrong. The Lord's loving it, and so's Gabriel, and so are the rest of the angels unseen. The Lord loves me too. Praise our union and the shame surrounding it, like a shirt you leave on even in the dark. Forget the imperative for now, the imperial command. All I've ever wanted was to be seen, then held the way amber holds bone. Listen, listen. John's singing on the radio again, and for once it's not the world, but just this room that's burning. Just one room. The whole world. Yes, it's self-obsessed. It's Narcissus giving himself a hand of applause. It's dandelion season, and there are 3 cats outside my apartment door. I cannot die. There's so much more I have to tell you. Thank you.
Oh,
My goodness.
I got
Okay.
lost. I forgot I was like, this was my reading too. I was just like, goodness me, MJ. I love your poetry so much. I was just like, yeah, I'm here to listen to my best friend read poems. I'm not here to do anything.
Hmm. Well, that was me
Beautiful,
too. Hmm.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work from both of you. Okay, I kind of want to sit and think for a really long time, but I also really want to do a Q&A. Do you guys want to answer some questions?
Yeah, of course.
Can I,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, because I can unmute myself, I'm gonna ask the first one, and then I ask everybody else to go ahead and post some questions in chat. But very selfishly, I'd love to hear about how you two write with each other. Can you share about your editing and your feedback process and how you two specifically are working together to make really amazing poems?
Yeah. So my book, Gospels for the tongue-tied, but I'll just call it Gospels because it's less of a mouthful. Um, most of the poems in it, I think there are about 3 or 4 that maybe MJ didn't see the first draft of. Um, And I mean, it wasn't originally like that. We didn't originally write with, or I guess to each other in that kind of way. But we started a group chat um, initially to talk about Sarah Ghazalali's collection Theophanies. We love her. We love Sarah. Um, yeah, we love her so much. And we started a group chat to talk about her book, and then the group chat developed into a Minecraft server, and then we were talking like every single day. And I can't remember who started it, but eventually we were just sending each other drafts of poems back and forth. So I think there are like 50 Google Docs links in that group chat at this point that are just different drafts of poems.
More
And
than more than 60.
yeah,
Way
more
more.
than 60. More than 60. Yeah, I can believe that.
At
There are
least including
45 poems in my
screenshots. Mhm.
yeah. And screenshots and Google Docs links and just everything. And there are 45 poems in my collection, maybe a bit more. I haven't counted recently, but and I think almost every single one, MJ had some sort of MJ and our friend Jenna Neski, who's also in the group chat. We love Jenna. Uh, they both had input on those poems, and I mean, it was such a special thing when I then asked MJ to blurb my book because I was like, I know you've read basically the entire thing, but you haven't read it in order. Would you like to blurb it? Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that
Do you
is.
have any? Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't speak for Q, but honestly, my writing process these days basically necessitates me spamming Q with how basically every single edit I make, whether that's
Yeah.
just starting with a line, or maybe if I have a first draft, I will send it to Q and then I will ask them, should I break the line here? What do you think of me changing this one word? What do you
Yeah.
think of me changing one line? Um, and yes, they have expressed that they enjoy it, but I do sometimes honestly feel not annoying, but rather I feel a little silly asking Q if I should add a comma or not, or if I should add an M dash or not to a poem.
No, it's don't feel silly. It's so good because I also, yeah, my writing process now necessitates, as you said, like it necessitates me spamming MJ with like a ridiculous number of screenshots or Google Docs links and just being like, look, I changed two words and a comma placement. Does this still make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have good conversations as well.
Yeah.
Not just with poems, but often we spiral into tangents. So this is a sort of warning for what comes ahead, because I don't know whether we'll start talking about Minecraft or not.
Yeah, we there might be a lot of tangents. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Mhm.
my editing process now, because it used to be so I don't know if MJ is the same, but I used to be quite insular. Like I would work and work and work alone. And then
No,
when I
yeah.
felt it was done, I would show other people. And now I'll write for like 20 minutes and I'll be like, yeah, MJ can see this. And I'll send it to MJ. And MJ will be like, well, you could do this. And I like this, but what if we did that? And we'll just have a discussion about why we're doing what we're doing with our poetry. And then
Mhm.
we'll go off on a complete tangent and talk about something else.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I feel that's
yeah,
one of the best things you could do with poetry and art making in general, is that you don't need to have a super concrete reason for absolutely every single word on the page, but just having a reason for why you're making any sort of decision definitely helps, even if it's
yeah,
just, I like this line break.
yeah.
So,
One thing that talking with MJ has definitely like done for me is forced me to consider my choices. Like it's made me a lot more of a, I don't know, considerate poet, I guess, because I'm thinking about, well, how will someone else read this poem? And then MJ tells me how someone else reads this poem, and I go, oh, if I change it like this, will this be more of what I'm trying to communicate?
right, yeah. Definitely. And to speak on that a bit more, I also want to add one of Ocean Vuong's sort of teaching methods in his workshops. which I have not attended, but he has spoken about in interviews, in that he'll have his students read each other's work, but instead of critiquing it or making any suggestions, for a few weeks they'll only read and comment on the poem and name the poem and say, I can see a fascination with trees, an obsession with the mother tongue, or anything like that. And it's only after spending time with one another can you really critique and make any sort of personal good decisions and suggestions with one another. Because how can you, for me and for a few other people, I would assume, the question is, how could you really help make someone's work better when you've only spent 5 or 10 minutes with them and their work?
Yeah. Oh, a question. When you workshop with other people, how different is it? That's a good question. Well, I don't really workshop with other people, so I don't know. But the one time I have was in person with a very lovely guy called Josh, who is a spoken word poet at the university I go to. And that was a completely different experience because he had, as you would expect, completely different perspectives on things. He was coming at it from a totally different angle. And not only that, because he's a spoken word poet, the things that MJ and I discuss, like the way things look on the page, the structure, the line breaks, things like that, those were less important to Josh. To Josh, the important things were, how does this sound when you say it? How does this breathe when you're performing it to other people? Whereas speaking a poem aloud is very important to me, but when I workshop with MJ, it's very much this poem is a piece of art for this page, if that makes sense. So it
Yeah.
sometimes a bit jarring.
No, yeah, definitely. There is a sort of balance between spoken word and how a poem looks on the page. I would say personally, to answer the question that you did, I think a lot of the workshops I have attended were with a lot of other people. So perhaps with 8, 7, or however many people. And what I did notice is what I mentioned is that people don't really go as much into detail as Q and I do, but there is a similar sort of mindfulness that I myself try to practice, where if I'm reading someone's work for the first time, I'm not going to say, oh, I don't like this. Or even if I personally dislike any certain element in a poem, I don't, I don't, I, I don't center on that. Um, and I think it is definitely much better to look at a poem and see how can it do what it does best, um, even better, and where is the fat that you have to trim, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There is a range of feeling in your poetry. Do either of you have a particular relationship to emotion when you're writing? Like, do certain states inhibit or assist the flow of language? I'm particularly curious about the verses of praise. Is it from a place of joy or grief or a mix? Ooh. I'm gonna let you start, MJ.
That is a wonderful question to start me off with, because I had a horrible writing block last year. And part of it was because I had gone way too deep into the rabbit hole of conveying a sort of super deep emotion in my own writing. And so the fallacy with my approach was that essentially every time I approached the page, I subconsciously and sometimes consciously thought, how can I make this the saddest poem in the world? Which does not lead to, which is not conducive to a very productive and healthy work life with my own poetry. But anyhow, perhaps let's speak about Q and I actually, since we have collaborated on a couple poems. I have noticed that even with some of my saddest poems that I enjoy very much, um, I found joy through writing them, in that I wasn't necessarily feeling the emotion that I had been trying to convey, but rather I had felt a sort of satisfaction and sense of play with literally playing with the line and with inserting certain elements and such. I would say that only a few times I have gotten emotional while writing. Um, so yes, I would say it's a sort of mix in that I acknowledge whatever grief I am feeling, but lately I have been into a sort of radical joy while writing, whether that's writing praise or writing in spite of this world's injustices and such. I definitely think that writing at its core, um, as with any other art, is meant to be a form of play. Since, well, to use musicians as an example, they play their music, and sports people, sports persons, play their games. They play soccer, they play basketball, whatever. And all this is to say, I do think poets should also play, whether that's on the page or just having fun while writing, or yeah. And and with Q, we yeah, this phenomenon was definitely
We, it,
felt by both of us during a collaborative poem where we were both just laughing so much, just
oh
writing
my
this
God.
absolutely miserable poem.
Yeah, we're just sat on a Discord call, laughing our heads off whilst writing really depressing lines. And I remember showing the poem to my sister afterwards, and she was like, I heard you laughing. I thought this was funny. I thought this was a funny poem. And I was like,
It is
you would have
funny.
been mistaken. The only other poem that we've written sort of together that actually was funny was a poem where I made MJ
Uh-huh.
a plum.
Uh-huh.
And that one was hilarious. But to answer the same question, slightly differently to MJ, I tend to write my first drafts in a sort of fugue state. So I'll just write it, and it'll just sort of come out of me. Um, and then when I come back to it for a second draft, I sit much more with the emotion that me in the fugue state, for whatever reason, was trying to experience.
I do have a couple of questions as well.
Oh, amazing. And I have a line of yours I want to talk about. But yeah, I think to go back to what I was talking about, I often feel that the emotion that I'm trying to sit in while I'm writing, I have to come back to. So I can't write an initial draft of a poem entirely in the feeling that I want to convey, because it won't come out right. It's not going to work. So I often have to come back maybe once or twice or even three times. The poem that's taken the most amount of drafts because of that kind of emotion that I needed to find is in my collection, and it's affectionately referred to as the Spork poem. And it's not actually called the Spork poem. It's called it's got such a long title. How to Use a Spork Correctly, or a Poem in Which I Am Not My Own. That took me 14 drafts to get right, and they're all stacked on top of each other in one document. MJ has read all of them.
Oh yeah, I have. Um, yeah. Shall I get to a question I wrote down?
Yes,
Yeah.
give me a question.
Yeah, it was for contrapuntal for a forgiving God.
Oh,
Since of course both of us write a lot about faith, and a lot of our conversations are about faith. I guess my question is sort of refers to the lines, "My blood is not my own," and to be
yeah,
thrown to the lions is to be thrown into the arms of God. Mhm.
yeah,
So basically, I noticed a sort of dichotomy between you acknowledging this sort of mortal helplessnesses people have, and our sort of ultimate dependence on God, But then again, there is a sort of rebellion in your poems as well as in just general attitude, perhaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, perhaps about faith and all these sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, sure. I have the poem open, because I figured that might help. Um, so my faith is a really interesting part of this book and this poem specifically, because the first half of the book is a lot of me sort of, I guess, placing in context my own emotion, like putting against each other like biblical and scriptural understanding of what it means to be a person, of what the prophets have gone through. So, there's a poem in the first half called Father, Father, Son, where I directly question God about the sacrifice of Isaac on the mountain, or Ishmael in it's the Quran, is Ishmael, isn't it? So it's me directly questioning God about that, about why that was even a thing that crossed its mind, which is, and I'm not going to beat around the bush, that is sacrilegious. To do that is sacrilegious. But I think to me, the most holy thing, the most religious thing I can do is to question God and to question my faith. And I think, you know, another poem in the first half, Noah becomes the earth's revenge. Like that's about Noah, but it's me speaking as Noah. It's me placing in my emotion in conversation with biblical stories and biblical happenstance, I guess. So Contrapuntal for a Forgiving God, it opens the second section of my collection, which is mostly about love. And I felt it was really important to begin with a poem that is ostensibly about loving God. The title, it's for a forgiving God, which is the biggest part of the Christian God, is that he forgives, right? That's the thing that you always have to hold on to, is that you're always forgiven. And I find that kind of radical, the idea of a radical forgiveness, which is why I named the poem that. And then the reference to lions and Birdsong. Lions was a direct reference to Daniel, who is a biblical character who people might know. He is thrown into a cave with a whole bunch of lions because he refused to stop praying to God, and God made sure he wasn't eaten alive by lions. And that, he had the courage to ignore the ruler of his land. He had the courage to stand up and say what he believed and have faith that he would be protected. And he was. And I think back when I wrote this, which was quite a while ago, but especially now, we need that kind of radical faith in something. You don't have to have a radical faith in my God or any God, but I think having a kind of belief is important to anyone. It's what keeps you going. It's what makes sure that you can avoid, I don't know, pitfalls of certain things. So I think, yes, apathy, exactly. So whatever you have a radical devotion to, I think that kind of intensity is important for human existence. Yeah, this poem, I think, is quite cheeky in the sense that in it, I'm admitting that I am entirely God's creation, whilst also saying that I own my voice, like it's entirely mine and there's no other influence on it, which is it's a slightly like wink and nudge thing to do, to say, especially as this is kind of directed towards God. Like I almost view this as a prayer. And there are other books that are more like other poems that are more like prayers in this book. But yeah, I almost view it as a prayer. And opening my section on love with what is essentially a prayer was really important to me. I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think your poem definitely, um as you said, it definitely sort of encapsulates the idea of free will, since you're stating that you're entirely God's creation, but God's creation has free will, and so their voice is entirely their own, as you said.
Yeah.
I find that incredibly interesting. Um, so yeah, if you don't mind, may I ask about the final poem in the book?
Yes, you
Yes.
may.
All right. In
I
reasons not to
love
be
this.
scared of the dark, the 11th line, because autumn is not the night, it is a lantern, something golden, something gorgeous. Could you perhaps speak to that and how important it is to you to portray autism not just as a disability and something negative, but rather something with that is good and has the potential for good and for beauty?
Yeah, so um throughout the book, I before this I sort of touch on what it feels like to be autistic. So in Genesis, which is the first section of my book, I'm very predictable like that. In Genesis, the first section, there's a poem called "To Be the Ocean and Not the Sky," where I talk about um, autism as an awful, almost mournful thing, and then there's poem for Jay in the second section of the book, which is um, for and after Jen Aneski, my very good friend, who is another autistic poet. Um, and we wrote a poem for each other. And Poem for Jay was my one, what came out of that. And I talk about the sort of persecution that autistic people face, but also the infantilization. So I briefly mentioned Elon Musk. So yes, my book has like a trigger warning for Elon Musk mentioned. Not that he's mentioned by name, but you can guess. And I talk about AI and people calling autistic people robots. And so in the final poem of the book, and I actually wrote this poem during a workshop that Jenna and I hosted about autistic poetic, I guess, behavior and the kind of writing about what it is to be autistic or what it feels like and disabled poetics in general. And because autism is not the night, it is a lantern, something golden, something gorgeous. I really do firmly believe that. I think so often it's easy to see disabilities, especially ones like autism, where you are isolated only by the difference your brain has to someone else, so they can't see why you're isolated, but everyone around you can feel it. It's so easy to feel that as a darkness, as something that consumes you and, is consuming you actively. For a really long time, it was a big source of like a big feeder into my depression, which was I don't know how to overcome the feeling that I don't know how to overcome the feeling that I will never be like anyone else. And the thing is that it's a good thing that I'm not like everyone else. My autism, being autistic, has led me to so many different places. I wouldn't be a poet if I wasn't autistic. I wouldn't interpret imagery in the way that I do if I wasn't autistic. I wouldn't feel the world the way I do if I wasn't autistic. So I think it's important for me to reclaim the word autism from people like Autism Speaks, from people who used it to bully me. I feel it's important to reclaim it as this sort of guiding light for me. You know, this word, this diagnosis, this disability, this disorder, it takes me from, you know, a place of misery and it leads me into what can be and what I could be in the future and all of the places where poetry can go and what we can think about that and what I can tell people. And if I can help anyone with my poem, and reasons to not to be scared of the dark. Um, if anybody reads that and goes, I feel comforted by that, that poem has done its job. Um, yeah, I think I wrote it with the intention of comforting myself, and I hope it comforts others now that it's a poem that is widely available to read.
It definitely does, I would say. I go to it. Um, yeah, I just go to it when I need it, I would say. Mhm.
I'm so glad. I wanted to ask you actually about Good Lord Green Apple. You made it sound
Right.
like I held you at gunpoint and made you read it. I kind of
Kind
did.
of
I kind of
before.
did. Yeah, I really love that
Kind
poem
of
of
did.
yours. I kind of did. I really, really love that poem of yours, and you know that.
Mhm.
I think it's second only to Lila, which will always be my favorite.
Yeah.
Just because of the way it made me think about God. But yeah, Good Lord Green Apple. I wrote down a line actually. I don't know whether I've written it down perfectly because I'm like, but um, when a poet needs something to grieve, he makes up a boy and a name and takes both away. Like that idea of like a poet having to fabricate grief. I was wondering if you could like talk about that kind of experience in your poetry and that
Hmm.
desire.
I think a, hmm, that was something I had definitely been wrestling with when I was writing the poems that would eventually make it into love letters. There's another poem in love letters called Self-Portrait as Empty Mirror, which
Yeah,
sort of is tangentially related, and where it has the line, I try to write about America, but all it is a portrait of something burning, something like
yeah.
that. And the, that poem um, is perhaps, these poems are partially me reckoning with um, American contemporary poetry, as well as the contemporary poetry scene, especially with young poets. And by young poets, of course, I mean those around high school age, early college age,
The
where
American teen writer.
there are so many institutions that reward and sort of encourage young, especially American writers, which is great, but the kind of poetry that they reward is often, how do I word this? Is sort of, hmm, basically they reward young people sort of mining for grief, whether that's generational grief or personal grief. There is a almost macabre fascination with
Like a like a
visceral
fetish for
imagery.
trauma.
Yeah, with death and trauma, images like napalm, bullets, and such. Which, of course, if your heritage presupposes that, um, then that's fine, I would say. But oftentimes, these very young poets have not even fully um begun to realize what the words they're using mean, just that they're impactful.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that's sort of where that line came from. And yeah, lately I have been trying my best just to not guardrail myself into writing nothing but vague, sort of lame love poems. Um, since, well, as you and I have both discussed, sometimes I get too into my own head about whether certain elements in poetry were are already popular, such as the phrases like "which is to say" and "because" and such, which are of course very small things. And yeah, I definitely do appreciate how Q brings me out of this self-imposed guardrail.
Why, thank you. I do my best. Because I love your poetry. Like every single poem that you send me, I sit there and I read it and I go, oh my God. Um, like every single poem somehow manages to be better than the last one you sent me, but in completely different ways. You're not repeating yourself. It's not like I feel like I'm reading the same poem 20 times, which I think is an affliction that quite a lot of younger poets have, where they repeat the same idea. And
Right.
I've been guilty of this, where like I've written 6 poems and all 6 are they could be one poem, you know? And I think it's such a strength of yours that that's not something I see you do. Like, even when poems have similar themes, maybe touch on similar things, you don't repeat yourself. They feel like distinct ideas, distinct sort of paths to maybe a similar place, but you arrive at it completely differently. It's beautiful.
Hmm. I'm very glad to hear that. I think you do as well. And I think one of the best things a poet can do is realize that their obsessions will stay with them forever. Um, and whatever it may be, I think a lot of the work of poetry is just re revisiting any sort of obsession you may have and trying to approach it in a different way, whether that's including a different image or just phrasing it in a certain way, or perhaps placing it in a different sort of context. Any of these sorts of things definitely help one not feel like they're writing the same poem over and over. And I think that's
Yeah.
fine anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think also trying the things that maybe you were scared to try. Like I always think about how I get into writing if I've been away from it for a while. I think you and I were having a conversation about this a couple of days ago, and I was like, well, I always try and write I'll always write a sestina, and none of these sestinas will ever see the light of day because they're all bad. But a sestina forces me to think really hard about why I'm saying what I'm saying because of the amount of repetition and the sort of really strict structure of it. I mean, I've written what I call a gustina, which is a combination between a guzzle and a sestina, which is really just me putting unnecessary burdens on myself. But I think that putting those unnecessary burdens, putting those limits initially when you're trying to get into something, it makes you a more conscientious poet. And that's definitely something that like I really strive towards.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. I, hmm, and sorry, my mind's gotten a little bit blank.
It's okay.
Um,
What
yeah.
are you working on and or reading now? Um, well, I'm working on very tentatively a chapbook sort of thing, but mostly just writing more poems and trying to get more into that again. Because I don't know how everybody else who's ever released a book here feels, but the whole process of like doing that takes a lot out of you. And then you have to get back into the writing and the reading. Um, and as for reading, I'm still reading Theophanies, bro. I just keep coming back to it.
Yeah. Theophanies by Sarah Ghazali. Go read it, guys.
Yes. This is
As for
just
me,
promo for Sarah.
yeah, as for me, I'm oh man, I was also reading Theophanies. And also Judas Goat by Gabrielle Bates. And
Oh my God, I read Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, which is a
yeah, Kavyakba. Since I did have to work on an essay on contemporary poetry, I did have to, not did have to, but I was reading Pilgrim Bell by Kavyakba as well, which is a great, really weird collection with so many weird
he's such
poems in it. He is
yeah, he's
so
such an
weird.
odd dude. I love him
Yeah,
so much. I love
yeah.
watching his whenever he reads poetry because he like
He
it's like it
does a
possesses
certain
him.
routine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got a bit of a wiggle. He's got a bit of a wiggle going on, and I love that for him.
Mhm.
If your poetry relationship severs, what does the other offer you and how will you foster that for yourself? Well, I really hope our relationship doesn't sever, MJ, because
I hope it does not. Yeah. I mean,
but
I'll just get your number and then we'll be fine.
yeah, just ring me. Um, but MJ offers me, hmm, it's a good question.
I
He
offer you a
is,
Minecraft server.
yeah, he offers me a Minecraft server.
That's it.
Thoughtfulness. I think I can have a tendency to be a bit of a rush as a poet because I write in a fugue state and I get everything down I get all of my first drafts down within 20 minutes maximum. I can sometimes have a tendency to be thoughtless after that and to not appreciate what I've done and to not return to it. Um, MJ is a very different writer to me, and we write quite differently aside from our editing process, including the other. Um, so when I send my poems to MJ and he sits and reads them, it forces me to be thoughtful about that and to sit and read it. And so I guess I would foster that for myself by just rereading and rereading and rereading my poems um, until I'm back in a state where I can approach it with the thoughtfulness that I get from him.
Hmm. Yeah. I think Q um definitely brings out the joy in poetry. I think it is so important to have someone, anyone really, to talk to about poetry, the same way one talks about their favorite musical artists, or yeah, or just treating poets like rock stars. I think that's definitely a great thing to do. It's it makes poetry feel fun and the, less like an academic venture all the time, since otherwise it would sometimes feel like I'm giving myself homework. Um, so yeah, Q is a great reminder to experience poetry the way I experience pop songs, the way with, you know, um, the required degree of thoughtfulness. And yes, if ever our relationship severed, I would definitely um, try to do what they did, which is in perhaps write scratch drafts or try things that I'm afraid of doing. Perhaps writing poems without the intent to make them incredibly, whatever, incredibly emotional or anything. Just, I suppose, uh, if ever, I would definitely want my approach to poetry to be one of joy, in that I want poetry to bring me joy, no matter what.
Oh well, I'm glad I bring that kind of joy. Yeah. I mean, I think also, yeah, I mean, you bring me thoughtfulness. I think sharing the poetry together is what brings that kind of joy for me. Like I do have that thrill of excitement when I see a new poem from our joint favorite poets. Just us texting each other. We're just like, Sarah Ghazali has published a new poem. We should go read it. I feel like we've mentioned her so much, but we do really love her. If anybody knows her, they should tell her how much we love her. Um,
Gosh, yeah.
oh, and Todd Dillard as well. I love him so much.
Hmm.
That man responds to emails like it's his job. Um, I love him so much. But yeah, that
Yeah.
kind of joy where MJ and I are just like giggling like fangirls in our DMs to each other, going, "Oh my God, maybe we should tweet at this person." Um,
Mm.
that kind of, yeah, the embarrassing joy that you only get with your friends.
Yes, exactly. That is so important. And yeah, it goes back to what I said about treating poets like rock stars. I don't think I have too much to add, but it is so much fun to treat a poet like the celebrity they are, not in a, in an unhealthy way, but just getting properly excited about someone is great since, well, this is our passion and it should bring joy. And I don't see why that should be controversial in any way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think being in yeah, there are certain like spaces that occasionally will like really like get my heart rate up in a good way. Like being in the fifth wheel press
Mhm.
Discord, that oh my God, because I'm such a big fan of Nat Ram, and the first time I like posted the link to my book, they responded with Q and kith and then the money flying away emoji. And I went, oh my God, Nat Ram likes my like it was such a fan moment that absolutely like oh it was insane. Like I was such a like giggly little fan about it and I love that I'm able to have that response to poets that I like that I'm not afraid to let myself feel that kind of joy. And I'm really glad that I help you do that, MJ, because it's so much fun.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, just getting and to add upon that, I think getting to know a poet through this um just the amount of joy that they may bring you is another way to connect with them, since with my own writing process, I actually sort of need that. And what I do is I just listen to readings and lectures over and over. And whenever I'm writing, um sometimes I will, as I describe it, hear that poet's voice in my head, and it does feel somewhat accurate. I would say I do a good impression of my favorite poets whenever I want to write like them. Um,
The
so
only
yes,
one I can properly imitate is Kaveh Akbar, and that's only because my brain goes, "Ooh, we're gonna do the
the
worm,
wiggle.
the wiggle." Oh, I love him. This is now feeling like Kaveh Akbar shade. It's not. We love him so much. It's
Me
just
too. I wrote an essay
if
on
you
him.
yeah, if you guys have never seen Kaveh Akbar read, please you like go onto YouTube and search a clip of him doing a poetry reading
He has this
because
wonderfully strange routine where he sort of moves his shoulders, then hunches down,
and he'll
then
do
goes on in
this
a
and
very
like through his
hypnotic
hair.
loop. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's great, so no one's
Mhm.
complaining, but yeah,
It is
it's kind of
hypnotic.
hypnotic to watch him read, to be honest.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely. And his poems are definitely they're strange enough to
Yes,
warrant that. His
you
poems
get
are
away with it.
so strange
I
in a
think the other
great
poet who could get away with it, but I don't know whether they do it, is Chen Chen.
strange.
If Chen
Hmm.
Chen was reading and started wiggling, you'd be like, yeah, no, your poetry is weird enough that this makes sense. I love Chen Chen, by the way.
Yeah.
Just that's not
Hmm.
hate, that's love. I love him so
Yeah.
much.
I don't
His
know if
his
I
Twitter
agree
presence.
if he could do the wiggle. He could do many bodily movements, but the specific caveat about a wiggle
Yeah.
is a very sort of esoteric thing. It almost
Yes.
feels like a summoning of whatever. Not actually, no, we're not meant to summon spirits, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. We're not really summoning spirits, but it does feel like it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other poet I can. Yeah. My brain does Kaveh Akbar okay. It doesn't do Sarah Ghazal Ali okay because I read her poems in my head when I read them on the page with such like intense emotion. And she does not read her own poetry out loud with the kind of intensity of emotion that my brain reads them for me, which is not like it's not a bad thing. It's just, differences in reading style. But it's almost that she's shy, and I'm like, don't be shy, Sarah. You've written amazing poems.
Yeah, and when you said that, I did go back to reading Theophanes with a sort of similar intensity, and it just brought so much life to the collection. So it's definitely, I definitely do think that the tone of a poet's voice, once you hear it, affects how you read their poetry again, at least for me.
No, I totally agree. I mean, my favorite, I'm going to mention it. My favorite poem of Sarah Ghazal Ali's is Story of the Cranes. See, I'm just smiling because he knew exactly what I was going to say. Story of the Cranes. And that one is creepy as hell. And oh my God, you guys need to read it. It's such a good poem. She weaves this sort of like, I think it's like a extra canonical text, like a sort
Yeah,
of
it
false.
is a sort of a common, not so common, uh, a relatively common story that basically the devil tempted the Prophet Muhammad to include three or just, yeah, a few verses in the Quran while reciting them that
Yes.
sort of included three major goddesses of the local region into the fold of Islam, which were later then, of course, removed, abrogated um, from the Quran. But in, I would say, Orthodox Muslim thought, this story is not accepted to be true in any single way,
Yeah.
since
Um,
then it would call into question the credibility of the Quran, and its message, as well as the general credibility of its memorization and how it's been passed down.
yeah. So Story of the Cranes, it's the Satanic Verses they're called, isn't it? It's a
Mhm.
sort of, it's an editing of that. It's sort of a retelling almost of that story. And oh, I had to read it about 3 times the first time because it just sticks to you. She's such an evocative writer, and it scared me. Like the final line of
Definitely,
the
yeah.
final lines. So it's this
Yeah.
yeah, he smiles and shows me his long neck.
Mhm.
Oh, I mean, that's not going to make sense or affect you guys if you haven't read the whole thing, but please go read the whole poem.
Yeah, it's basically the poetic equivalent of a horror movie reveal, which
Yeah.
is so jarring because the rest of the book, it does not have this tone at all, I would say.
No, you're not being jump scared by her father slash the literal devil having a long, you're not being jump scared by that in the
It's
rest of
a
the book.
it's a
The rest,
literary scare, yeah.
yeah, the rest of the book is this very beautiful sort of interrogation of
Reverend, yeah.
faith and, you know, of Quranical and biblical women. I say biblical because they're biblical to me, but
Mhm.
Quranical,
Yeah.
you know, uh, you know, Sarah and Hajar and Mary, and these women are sort of existing within uh, the author of the book, almost as like direct presence. Oh yeah, it's really good. I feel like we've definitely gone on a tangent, but it was a tangent worth taking.
Only 5 minutes or so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm. It was a great tangent. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic
And
tangent.
mhm. And yeah,
Yeah, you wrote love letters so long ago. I wonder, how does it feel to revisit it now?
it is sort of like seeing a ghost, but it is so strange because it has gone, rather, it has been so long that, hmm, reading this book is almost like reading an entirely different writer. Um, and it has gone to the point where I've become impressed by myself. I wrote a lot of this book in the entirety of 2022, and it is to praise past me, not afraid of anything, I would say. And I think that's why I'm there's no shame in me reading my old work, because the I would say the mindset I had while writing love letters, or at least the poems that would go on to be in love letters, was that of curiosity, experimentation, and the thought that the poets I loved were my contemporaries and therefore my peers, and that I considered them my peers in thought, and therefore I placed myself beside them and didn't treat them, um, or rather put them on any sort of pedestal. Rather, I engaged critically with whatever ideas I was interested in, and I didn't shy away from rebuking anything that I felt I had to rebuke or that I felt differently towards.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important, like putting yourself on the same level as other poets writing today. I think maybe that's a thing that I see a reluctance for perhaps in younger poets, teenage poets, is like a reluctance to view people like Ocean Vuong or Kaveh Akbar or uh, even
Richard
Richard
Siken.
Steichen. Oh my God, Dickie Sykes. Sorry, I really shouldn't call him that on a recorded Zoom call. Richard Steichen as your peer and your equal in terms of writing. And like it's okay to engage critically with those pieces of work. Like you don't have to revere them just because they are revered poets. You can bring them to yourself and engage in a way that means something to you. Um, I do, like, I'm not going to pretend that I don't love those poets I just mentioned. I have an after poem, a poem that's after one of Ocean Vuong's poems in my collection. You know, my poem that was published in Zagaram is after Ocean Vuong as well. Um, so I understand the love. I think he's great, but I also think that it's so important to, as a poet, know that your response is and can be as beautiful as the first, as the call. If we're thinking of poetry as a call and response, the response is just as beautiful as the call was. Like you're constantly in conversation with everything that's come before you, and what will come after you is also in conversation with you, even if it doesn't know it. So I think it's important to not let that conversation be seen as you exclusively revering what has come before. It's okay to cut down your reverence a bit. And
Irreverence is important in poetry, definitely.
yes,
Yeah, Sarah Ghazali did have uh does have a sort of point on that, where in one of her recent interviews with, I can't remember the journal, she, when asked about one of her uh not one of her poems, but rather about her poems that explored doubt and yeah, doubt within faith, her response was that um her response was, I trust that love won't lead me astray. And I found that incredibly beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, and that approaching anything, whether that's God, whether that's religion, or any sort of faith, or one's own art, or any sort of matters in one's life, uh, yeah, approaching anything with love, um, I do believe is an amazing way to do so. Um, and with the question of art making as well, I think um, this relates to perhaps actually relates to Ocean Vuong's point when asked about, or rather, when he was speaking about On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, the setting of the novel. He said that he could have put the characters anywhere, but he chose to put them in the same setting that he grew up in. He chose them to be Vietnamese American characters, um, in order to say that the life he's lived and the life people like him are living is worthy of being high art and of being the inspiration for something great. And I, in my core, have just taken that to be, with regards to any sort of art making venture, when in that when you write any sort of poem about anything, you're inherently stating, um, that this is beautiful and this is worthy of beauty to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Yeah, that's fun. I love love, and I love all different kinds of love, and I have such a reverence for my friends and the poetry that we write and poetry in general. I have a love for it. I mean, I'm studying English literature at university. You'd kind of hope I have a love for poetry. Sat here talking about my poetry book. Imagine if I was like, no, I hate it. No, I love poetry. Yeah,
Mm,
it means
yeah,
so much to be able to talk about it.
definitely, definitely.